Thank you, Jose. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here once more. Very nice to see so many familiar faces and also some new faces. I'm not a TIA veteran like Margit, who's been here 3 times. It's my 2nd time only. But there are also some new faces here, and I actually would like to acknowledge and welcome our new colleague, Consul General Jette Bjerum from Denmark. So maybe if you want to quickly... So she's leading the Trade Innovation Center here in Bengaluru, so welcome and looking forward to interacting with you in the future. I'd like also say a few words of thanks to Jose, actually. It's really impressive and inspiring to see with which passion and commitment he's really driving this summit, now the 3rd time, so I think he has also deserved a round of applause. So thanks so much, Jose. And of course also his wife, Tanya, who's somewhere in the room, who by the way is speaking very well. So thank you so much, Tanya. Last but not least, I also would like to welcome my colleagues from the University, ETH Zurich, Fatime, who will be then launching over there the City Climate Cup in a couple of minutes. So, as was mentioned, my role is to moderate the panel on mobility, and I'd like to start by actually giving you some perspectives on mobility and mobility trends in Switzerland. But allow me to do this a little bit differently than the usual speeches. And actually, that will require for you to use your imagination. And I'd like you to imagine that today you're in Switzerland, sitting in a train. And for those who have not been to Switzerland, who has not been to Switzerland? Okay, so for those who like imagination, we have put up a YouTube video, so you can imagine what it's like to be in a train in Switzerland. So now, imagine you're sitting in this train is taking off. And dear guests of the India Advantage Summit train, I welcome you on board to the train to Zurich main station. My name is Sebastien. I will be your trusted train conductor for the next couple of minutes. We have just left the train station, and we left the train station actually very punctually at, I think now it's 10:32, and we shall arrive soon at your desired destination. I hope that everyone has a ticket. My colleague Cassius will check in a couple of minutes. So this is a guided train ride, and it will be my pleasure to give you some information and perspectives on mobility in Switzerland. Dear ladies and gentlemen, as you're sitting in this train, please note that Switzerland's railway system has currently the world's most densest railway network, which is, by the way, almost 100% electrified. Indeed, Swiss public transport has been quite a success story in Switzerland. Demand has never been as high as it is today. As you will know, Switzerland has a population of 8 million. I think that's about 6 times less than here in Karnataka. But it counts 8 billion passengers every year of public transport. That includes trains and buses and trams. In fact, this popularity of public transport in Switzerland is one of the main challenges we are facing. And in fact, even infected recently, or about a year ago, our former transportation minister. She was seen actually in a train, and there was no more space for her, so she had to sit on the stairs of this double-decker. And of course, it was photographed and put on Twitter, and a lot of which went viral. So this high demand for public transport will only rise actually in the future in Switzerland. In fact, we expect that by 2040, the public transport utilization will go up by 50%. And interestingly, this is also linked in Switzerland actually to the aging society. You have more and more people that have time for leisure, and they will take typically public transport. So the Swiss Railways, SBB, is actually looking, or has been looking at the different scenarios of the future of mobility. So what does those trends mean for SBB? And SBB is really looking at not only becoming actually, or being a train, but really being a mobility solution provider. So they've been looking at 4 different scenarios, 2 of which are sort of assuming that technology and new technologies will be adopted fairly easily, and 2 of them saying that actually technology will not play such a huge role. So what are those 4 scenarios? Scenario number 1, actually we just made a little stop, I see, okay. Scenario number 1 is, sees that the new automated vehicle technology will allow for more individual and direct mobility for passengers and freight traffic. So that actually will encourage a growing urban sprawl. And in this scenario, private road travel comes out on top over rail travel and public transport. So there will be a high degree of individuality and automated mobility. That's scenario number 2. Also, like looking at the second scenario, which looks at a high adoption of technology, the second scenario says that with increasing actually pressure on resources that we see, people actually are much more willing to share mobility. So mobility as a service, as we also know it here, will gain momentum in the urban agglomerations in Switzerland, also due to increasing density. So new efficient mobility services lead to intelligent collective and multimodal systems that are closely interconnected. So you really try to coordinate the different types of mobility in a much more comprehensive way. By the way, car sharing will be part of that, and car sharing in Switzerland has a very long tradition. It goes back actually as far as 1948, when the first car sharing concept has emerged in Switzerland, the first one actually in the world. And then only in the late 80s, Switzerland has then commercialized that concept, which has then been also like replicated, of course, in different contexts. So car sharing is very much part of the Swiss understanding of mobility. But there are also scenarios which look at, which actually assume that technology actually, it's just a bit of a hype that we're seeing today. We're talking a lot about mobility, but on the ground, technology actually will not really be implemented to a large scale. So scenario number 3 says that many things actually will remain as today. So new technologies are implemented only sporadically. Public and private transport systems are developed independently instead of being coordinated, and the car will remain very important. So basically what that means, there will be more and more traffic. And the 4th scenario, again, is a scenario that assumes that technology will not be adopted. However, that politicians and policymakers will push for more public transport. So that will actually create even more pressure on mobility solutions such as trains, trams, and buses, and other traditional forms of collective mobility. So within those 4 different scenarios that we're looking in Switzerland, of course, e-mobility is also a big question, as it is here in India. Maybe the plans in Switzerland are probably a bit less ambitious than here in India, but there's much more of a step-by-step approach. So our deadline actually for our policymakers is 2022. And by 2022, the Swiss government would like to have every 7th vehicle in Switzerland being electric. So that's 15% of all vehicles. So in contrast to other European countries, however, there are very few subsidies actually for e-mobility in Switzerland. And it's a very Swiss approach to it. So rather than subsidizing, actually, we focus on creating the framework conditions, to creating the infrastructure which encourages then e-mobility. So the government, the policymakers would like to focus actually on building charging facilities in buildings, on establishment of rapid charging networks, but also on things like upskilling, education, and regulatory adjustments. So, ladies and gentlemen, we haven't yet arrived in Zurich, and you're still here in Bangalore. But nonetheless, I think we've slowly come to the end of our train ride. And we have 4 other guests in this train who would like to share with us their perspective on mobility. So with that, I actually would like to invite the next guest to come on stage. And thank you so much for your attention. And I think the next guest is Mr. Jan Kühne. As I learned, he actually knows Swissnex very well. He's been also in San Francisco in touch with Swissnex. So it's a great pleasure to have you here on stage and joining us. And yes, looking forward to hear your presentation. Thank you so much, everyone.